What's going on, everyone? Demeter has been out for a good couple of weeks now, has had a patch, and has had a lot of opportunity to shine and also be broken apart. Let's dive into what I think is good, bad, and what straight doesn't work with the goddess of harvest and agriculture. Starting with the great. This goddess is an incredibly creative look at Age of Mythology. The Ensemble Studios team created a very simple model when they made the game back in 2002. Myth units are big, scary units that strike fear into your opponent's soul. From the Minotaur to the Fire Giant, everything's purpose was fairly simple and easy to understand. You kill enemy units and dominate the battlefield. Demeter flips that role completely on its head and suggests that myth units could be more of a supportive role instead. At first, I was very nervous that a myth unit that can gather resources would be ridiculously overpowered and break the game. You know, the dynamic of eco versus technology versus aggro. But after a hotfix, this unit has ended up with good stats and has a really cool interaction with the enemy in that the economic side of the unit can be interrupted. In other words, if I decide to go for the werewolf play, and my opponent decides to play aggressive, he can limit the amount of resources I gain from this unit. If I decide to play the werewolf and my opponent goes for a boomy play, I can stay competitive with the eco until I decide to attack. And if my opponent decides to tech, I can hit him with a timing attack that will make him rue the day that he crossed the power of the Lycaon. Overall, I give this unit a 9 out of 10. It's one of my favorites in the game at the moment. The next unit to touch on is the Siren. This unit is the ultimate in support from a myth unit standpoint. Her ability to completely remove an enemy unit from play on paper seems incredibly powerful. It makes you want to build a bunch of them. However, unfortunately in the heat of battle, managing to click on the right unit consistently, even with just one of these, proves to be a very difficult task. And even if you do manage to disable the right unit, you're left feeling as if I did all this work and at best went 1-for-1 in the actual fight. Or worse, the enemy heroes jump on your Siren, and the Colossus you stole is now on top of your fortress making you cry. I'm yet to try getting the unique upgrade, Enchanted Him, but in reality, the cost of this unit is prohibitive. Not counting the Titan, it is tied most expensive unit in the game at 350 food and 30 favor. But its actual effect on the game is nowhere close to its cost. Given the cost it has, I would expect to almost be stealing the enemy unit that I stole and having it do my bidding. All in all, without some serious changes to this unit, I can't see the unit working in a competitive setting beyond the free one disabling enemy siege and making it very tough to break a turtling Demeter. I give the Siren 5 out of 10 and hope it can get some love in upcoming patches. The next unit I want to touch on is the Harpy. It pains me to say this, but this unit is a disappointment. I think most people were expecting a cool, unique human unit out of the fortress. Instead, we got a flying myth unit that basically covers the role of the Siren, but does it better. Oh, and it can also erase an entire army with its special if your opponent isn't careful. I'll be the first to admit, I don't like flying units in my RTS games. I didn't like them when I tried StarCraft 2. I didn't like them in the OG game with the Rock, the Phoenix, or even the Stymphalian Bird. And I don't like them now that the number of these is increased with the Onmaraki wreaking havoc on my games. Why don't I like them? Well, they can't get hit by melee units. It's not fun to have a unit that's made obsolete because my opponent built something that is literally invincible to that unit. If all my melee units could fight back in some way, perhaps in a similar way that Greek heroes attack flying units, then all of a sudden we can probably have a conversation about a complete stat rebalance for flying units and make them fit into this wild and wacky AOM world. But right now, it's a balancing nightmare and a source of stress rather than enjoyment in my AOM games. More specific to the Harpy, however, this unit is one of the only units that comes with a one hit and you're all dead ability. Of course, I need water to use said ability, but that in of itself is a problem for a competitive Age of Mythology game, and brings me to the overall problem of not just the Harpy, but some of the next units as well, which is consistency. The Harpy has the potential to erase an enemy army, has the potential to erase an enemy unit, has the potential. But how often can I actually pull off these features in a real game? If I use a Medusa, every single game, I'm going to get off her ability and turn a unit into stone. If I have a Lampeter and I research her secondary ability, every single time I'll turn a unit into a chicken. This simply isn't the case for the Harpy. My final problem with the Harpy is that it's just a lot of busy work. The busy work with the Harpy is off the charts. Every myth unit requires a lot of micro, but the Harpy turns this up to an 11. In the heat of battle, I need to put my heroes on the enemy myth units, my archers on enemy infantry, my infantry on enemy cavalry, and my cavalry on enemy archers. Then I also need to put my Harpy on my enemy high value units and either perfectly time it so the units drop on the enemy army or fly them off to a nearby river and have the units drown. It's just too complex. I don't see a fix for this unit, and I'm in the crowd that would have preferred a cool, massable human unit of sorts in the fortress. This unit is a 3 out of 10 at best for me. The final myth unit to touch on is the Hammer Dryad. This one is an oof. I'm going to get straight to the point. I'm not a fan of the design. Putting aside the fact that the Hammer Dryad is, for all intents and purposes, useless before you grab the unique tech, the actual ability is the Harpy issue on steroids. You simply aren't going to get any consistency from this. Either I'm going to blow up an entire gold mine of dwarves, or I'm going to sit there trying not to accidentally move my trees for the rest of the game so that I might be able to blow up my enemy army. For the sake of argument, let's pretend that the unit gets a quality of life improvement such that it's no longer frustrating to use. Say, in tree form, it can't be moved unless you use its ability. I'm still stuck with a unit that's either going to erase my opponent's army or do nothing. I don't want this in my RTS games. Not only that, this unit functions best when my opponent is not paying attention. And to be honest, when you're not paying attention either. So every time you end up getting a big moment, you've missed it. To also get into the nitty gritty of the data, this unit is also missing some stats that are consistent amongst all myth units, specifically negative multipliers versus heroes on both the normal attack and explosion. I had a moment where I was sneaking my tree off to set up for a dwarf nightmare explosion scenario, got caught. My opponent chased my tree with its counter, the Hearser, and I looked away thinking it was dead, only to look back with it hanging around with 25% HP and a dead Hearser on the ground. Just strange stuff considering its attack stats are on the surface terrible. I think this unit does have an easy fix, thankfully. One option would be to remove the tree mechanic in its entirety and make the special ability its regular ability and lower the damage so it's reasonable. Right now, this is a 1 out of 10 for me. Sad stuff. Let's move on with more of the good stuff. With the 4 new myth units, Demeter also brought 4 new heroes. My favorite hero by far is Orpheus. His aura solves a really big problem for Greek in that they struggle versus mass myth units. From a balance perspective, the aura stats might be a little bit on the strong side, but there is counterplay in that, and I just need to eliminate the Orpheus, then my myth units can start popping off. Alternatively, as Demeter, it's super important to keep Orpheus alive, and doing some fancy footwork can kind of give you enough to have the edge in a battle. I'm not sure I'm the biggest fan of him having a ranged attack, as it brings back some of the problems from Legacy that I don't miss at all, namely early game ranged hero harassment. But he's weak enough and slow enough that it isn't really a problem and you can chase him down, similarly to how the Pioneers can be chased down if this is attempted. All in all, this is a great hero and a creative solution to a problem that has plagued Greek since the start of Retold. It's a 9 out of 10. Iawis is the classical age hero and is a safely designed hero. It fits the previous hero system of having a fast classical age melee hero, and he's basically Atalanta for all intents and purposes, but just better, which is a little confusing to me. He's got the same speed, more damage, more effective HP, more bonus damage. It seems like maybe he started with a little bit less speed. The devs thought that it was maybe a little too slow, ported up, but forgot to take down some of the other stats to balance that out. Obviously, it's a small balance complaint here and nothing to lose sleep over. But because of that, I have to take some points off. It's a 7 out of 10. Simple hero. Well done. Icarus, Icarus, Icarus. We all knew when we saw the flying hero that this would be a problem. But to the extent of which it is a problem, let's just say this doesn't feel like Age of Mythology at all. Putting aside my own personal dislike of flying units, he has a 5 speed, 18 range, and deals AoE damage. It's simply not okay to have a unit with this kind of power budget. Remember, hero units are first and foremost anti-myth units. Sure, they can be okay fighters as well, as can be seen by the Hersur or the Onnamusha, but this guy is a one-man army. Build him, send him off to raid, bring him back, kill off entire lines of archers, wiggle micro, and when he finally gets targeted, to completely remove the DPS of your opponent's army. It's just a mess of a unit from a competitive standpoint, to say the least. Some solutions to this would be to make him very slow, increase his HP. I'm talking like 3.8 speed slow. His AoE attack is nonsense to begin with, but if he's slow, at least I have the ability to run away from him. The other route would be to give him a bow and arrow and single target damage. For reference, Icarus is doing somewhere between 1 to 1.5 DPS less than his counterparts. But when you add in the AoE impact, all of a sudden, he's actually potentially 6xing his damage. Now, it is fine to have strong things in AoM. Things that we want to get out and enjoy. We've got Bellerophon, Polyphemus, Perseus, John Wick. The list goes on, but they all have one thing in common. They're in the Mythic Age. If Icarus were a Mythic Age hero, I'd probably say he's really well placed and a great addition to the roster. I'd probably look to boost his HP a bit if that was the case, but the damage stats are there. But as it is, this unit is covering up for literally all of Demeter's weaknesses, and I don't think it's healthy. I have to give it a 4 out of 10. Which brings me to Lord Midas. This guy is cool. He turns units into gold. Heck yeah, my casual fantasy is filled to the brim with this guy. It works with Demeter's building bonus and the Colossus as well. Perfect. We've got a whole bunch for competitive stuff as well inside of it. Then you start playing with it and realize in a competitive game, you aren't really going to be getting many of these interactions at all. Why? It takes 700 damage before you can turn something to gold, and he has to get the last hit. All right, I get it. We can't have the entirety of the map filled with gold statues. It'd be a mess. But this solution makes the unit near useless. We can do so much better. I've got 3 potential solutions that could be used to fix this thing. 1, give Lord Midas a long cooldown ability, let's say 1 to 2 minutes, that turns myth units to gold on touch. Add a cool animation of Midas reaching out and touching the unit, and we're good. At most, you're getting 5 to 10 gold spawns over the course of a game. There's no problems here. It's not going to be too much. A second solution would be a normal cooldown ability that turns any unit to gold, but loses 2 gold every second and will turn back into a unit when the gold runs out. So say it's 500 gold, it'll drop down to 0, and then it'll turn back into a unit and you're good to go. Not the most fun, but you know, it would definitely still fill the role. And number 3, which would be my preference at the moment, would be to swap Icarus and Midas from Heroic Age and Mythic Age respectively, adjust the stats, and leave the ability as is. He'll have more opportunity to get his gold statues out on the map. You probably want to mine these gold statues a little bit more, as gold is going to be very important when you're on the defense as Demeter, and having an extra 500 gold could be the difference between life and death in a game. Moving away from the units to the god powers. If you know me, you'll know I don't like the idea of defensive god powers very much at all, and Demeter is this completely. I hate Earthwall, I hate Forest Protection, I'm no fan of Citadel or Sentinels either for that matter. However, Arcadian Meadow is surprisingly a really well-made god power. I love the idea of a defensive god power that has a cooldown. It's fantastic. It is, however, a little bit on the funky side with how units behave while on top of the meadow, and could do with some work where that's concerned, but it's still good. If something were to be improved here, I'd say that maybe an attack command move would simply move the units off the Arcadian meadow, and the meadow would act as a barrier of sorts if the units wanted to fight, right? If you want to move onto it, then you just move normally and then it's all good. All in all, this is a 9.5 out of 10 god power. Really well done. The communal hearth is, again, surprisingly really well made. You can siege it down with no losses. You can rush in to take it down and take some losses, or you can ignore it and try and fight near it and regret the decision. You can also micro really hard and pull the units that are getting converted, but it's really hard to do this, like really hard. All in all, it's a 9 out of 10 god power. I'm a fan of this one too. The Underworld Invasion is at the moment fine, in quotation marks. I don't mind it, but its actual design has a serious oversight that really should be addressed. Effectively, you can delete all town centers but one manually. Click Underworld Invasion on that final town center that's left standing, and then just simply rebuild all the other town centers. Or you can just rush Mythic Age and use the god power. Then go grab your second settlement and pretend like there were no problems here at all to begin with. I think the solution is pretty simple, which is instead of you getting 100 units flat, regardless of how many settlements you've got, you get 40 units per settlement destroyed. This gives the players choices with the god power, and choice is always good. As it is, it's a 5 out of 10 because of the oversight. If this gets fixed, then it's probably like an 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 god power. Finally, Wither. I think you all know what I'm going to say about this one. It's simply not a god power. Its primary use is to disable your own Arcadian meadow or to remove your opponent's berries. Yay? Of course, on some of the more funky maps, you can open up a base and go for a wild strategy, but like, that's not a W for this god power, unless it also has some other cool uses too. Think Shifting Sands for this one. I have no ideas how to improve this god power. It just isn't it. Perhaps like in Lion King, the withered land should grow something back that you can gather from that's good. Like maybe some super berries or something. I don't know. At the moment, I end more games than I'd like with this god power just simply not being used at all. It's a 1 out of 10, unfortunately. All in all, Demeter, as she is right now, feels like a casual player's dream. There's a lot to do with her, a lot of potential for cool interactions, and a lot of opportunity to sit back and build yourself a really nice base with lots of traps that the AI can charge in and fall into. Competitively speaking, this thing is just all over the place. The potential for the Civ is without a question there, but it's just a little too much and really does need some work for it to be a goddess that I'm happy to roll when I play random. She's obviously incredibly weak when played without a good plan, and from what I've heard and seen to some degree, incredibly strong when you do play into her strengths. Hopefully we see some more improvements to her over the coming months and she becomes a welcome part of the furniture inside of the AOM cast. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys in the next one.